Welcome to Sports Doc Talk. Dr. Garcia, once again, it's great to see you. I think I've heard this music way too much because I've got like
I
a little
love it.
bop going on.
I
And
was
I'm
doing
like,
the same thing.
why am I bopping to this music? This is a terrible sign. Maybe we're doing too many shows because I'm thinking about it in my sleep. Before we continue, we have a great show, great guest. But before we get to them, Dr. Garcia, how are you doing today?
I'm good. I'm really good. I'm
Yeah.
excited for the show. Something different. Put a little spin on it. Each time you never know who's going to be on here.
That's right. And as always, we always like to give a shout out. Where's our little shout out here? Let's give a shout out to the Recovery Shop. This episode is sponsored by the Recovery Shop. Orthopedic surgeons like Dr. Garcia and patients alike love the Recovery Shop for its curated selection of physician approved post operative recovery products from braces to nutrition. We've had the nice machine, you name it. We have
The
it all for
Reblis is
you.
on there.
Huh?
The Reblis is on there too.
The Reblis, so many cool things. And obviously, we know why Dr. Garcia loves it because it's easy. He can push his patients that way, and it's just great for everyone. So, check us out at the Recovery Shop. And Dr. Garcia, you excited about today's guest?
I am. I'm excited. And one more thing on the Recovery Shop. Again, we brought it up many times, but this is awesome for the patients, right? Like
Yeah.
you want something new. If we hear something new today or on rehab, I can call them and say, hey, listen, put that on the website so my patients can find it easily, right? You're not going to Amazon. You're not going to other proprietary websites where you don't know the quality. These are all been pre-vetted by myself and working with these top guys in the Recovery Shop. And it's great for surgeons kind of have your own little hub, right? It adds a little personalization to it. The
Yep.
patients really like it. And honestly, the products, which Will's tried, I've tried, they really work too.
Will
These are
didn't want to
vetted.
give it back, and we had Grant on from the Nice Recovery, and I told him, I said, the best part about having the Nice Recovery and is the way it worked wonders, and especially for my wife, that I was laid up and she didn't have to run around getting me ice packs all the time, and I was able to use the machine. But when I actually had to send it back, I was very disappointed. Let's not go down this rabbit hole. We've
No, I
had
got to
this
stop you. We got
already.
to move on. We got such a good
No, we
guest
always
today.
do this. Listen, we've got a
It's
great
okay. Our
guest.
show's gonna be short, as you know. Our show is always short.
Oh, shut up, man. We're not doing that. Come on. You know how that works. Come on. Let's bring in. Where is he? Where is Austin? Austin Robinson, working with Arthrex in Seattle. And before Austin, I apologize because I'm jumping the gun here and I'm yip yapping away. I just want to let the viewers and the listeners know, right? We have nothing to do with Arthrex, any kind of financial standpoint or anything like that. Okay. We're talking about Arthrex and we're bringing you on because the product is so good and it's not only just beneficial for our surgeons, but I could care less about that because I'm not a surgeon. I'm a patient. And when you've got cool tools to play with, it makes my recovery a whole lot better and everyone else out there that's a patient. And for someone that actually has some gear in my leg, I'm very thankful. So, Austin, welcome to the show. Oh, Garcia, interrupt me because I'm talking too much.
No,
Austin,
you're
welcome
doing
to the
great.
show.
Thank you for
Yeah.
having me.
So
It's a pleasure to be here.
So I'd like to introduce Austin again. I'll bring that up again. There's no monetization from Arthrex on this. I'm a consultant for them. I work for them. I help with product development and other things and videos, but nothing to do with this. The reason I bring someone like Austin on is, first off, Austin, how long we know each other? I think 5, 6 years.
Yeah.
And we talk about internal brace. Will, don't get started yet. Wait. And we talk about ACL repair. We talk about all this innovative stuff. And you hear me talk about, I visited here, we went here, we did this, and that all sounds great. But it doesn't happen like that. You don't just go to those places. You don't just get those new products. There has to be someone behind the scenes. And when you're doing the type of complex surgeries that I'm doing in my surgery center, or you're looking to constantly be on what they have, and we'll go to Arthrex as alpha beta launches. So we get the products before other surgeons get them. How does that happen? Well, it happens through someone like Austin, right? And you pair up to get those things earlier, so you can try them, you can use them in safe manner. And there's so many different things that Austin's team offers as a subunit of Arthrex, and then the major corporate we'll get into too. Like, what is the benefits of this? and what can surgeons learn from it. And this is, a lot of different industry does this, but they have a specific way of doing it for sports. And I remember, I won't get too much more, Austin. Sorry, I don't want to take up time, but I remember when I
That's
was
right.
in
Here we go.
residency and
Here we
fellowship.
go.
I know. But I was wondering, like, how do they get in? How are they able to get involved in so many things? And it's not just the products. It's not just the glitz and the screen in the background, which we'll get into in a minute. It's the whole thing. It's the videos. It's the teaching. It's the focus on the entire unit, and making sure that surgeons are an integral part in helping out with this sort of company. And it's pretty awesome. So anyhow, without further ado, Austin is the owner and agency owner of the Seattle Pacific Northwest, and he has done way too many jobs in the past, and he's a good friend of mine. We talk way too much. My wife's jealous of Austin. I talk to him more, I think, unfortunately.
Mine as well.
So anyhow, well, thank you for coming on. And Will, do you want to pop his little bio up there, or his little?
Yeah, I'll throw it up there. And Austin, just real quick, man, how did you get involved with Arthrex?
That's a great question. And thank you for having me. It's a distinct privilege to be on the program. This is a prestigious show. To catch every episode. It's always fun to hear. So it's a unique experience to be featured with you all and be part of the conversation. Obviously, Dr. Garcia, thank you so much for your approach to patient care, because it really aligns with Reinhold's vision at Arthrex of helping surgeons treat their patients better and helping people get better. And you do that at the cutting edge. You're the tip of the spear in so many different modalities. But I found my way to Arthrex. I was working for a competitor, as often as the story in the medical device world. And my previous boss, Bobby Adams, who was very influential in my life and career, gave me an opportunity to embrace Arthrex. Is a lesser known fact about Arthrex, but something that is a feature that we take great pride in is Arthrex is one of the largest medical education companies in the world, if not the largest. And he hired me into a role that was a burgeoning new department called our local medical education department. And just kind of progressively made my way through the different levels of the organization, and have been privileged and honored to be given the opportunity to take the helm with Arthrex Seattle. We have a tremendous team. I just play a very small part, but it's a really fun opportunity to be a part of it.
I'm laughing. He doesn't play a small part. He's the man. This is the man. He's a strong leader. It's amazing, all the different people that talk about how good a leader you are, Austin. But I'm not making so you can at least walk out of the room and not have your head explode.
Yeah.
So
yeah. I'm going to get my wife and see if she can listen in just to.
My wife would tell me exactly different about 10 minutes ago. So I guess this is a good way to start. When people hear, I think, when some patients hear industry, they think that's awesome. Like, they see Arthrex, patients come in all the time asking me for, I want the tightrope, I want the internal brace, I want, a swivel lock, I want the thing Aaron Rodgers had, I want the thing that, Neil Elitrosh did to that other guy, that other NFL player, right? They ask for those things. So they have a reasonable perspective. So I think the idea of industry and surgeon type of thing is not really a negatively influenced at this standpoint, but from a surgeon standpoint, it is a different thought process. And especially early on, I think some places think of like, oh, if you talk to industry or industry talks to you, this is like, you shouldn't get involved, you shouldn't help out. And even early on for me, when I was in practice, it was surprising to me working with you guys. And I worked with, Arthrex a lot because I do sports, and that's like one of your biggest things, right? Like you guys are, it's mega. And what I realized pretty quickly was like, it's not just about the implants. It's about, what do you want to get better at? What do I want to improve on? How do I want to help my patients get better? And it's weird because for me, it felt more like family situation and understanding like, what is the whole that we want to improve on? Like, if I go to Austin all the time, I'm like, what's new? What can you show me that's new? And I don't have to, stive the internet, right? He's going to help me, give me the catalog of things that I can look at, and also being fair with pricing, which is awesome. And so I think, how do you navigate that with surgeons that are skeptical of the idea of industry, right? It's alarming, especially new surgeons. You have older surgeons that are like, I'm not involved, I don't really care, I'll just do whatever. And we all know that situation. We've talked about that before. But these newer guys, social media, they're hitting that. They want to prove themselves. They're gunning. How do you deal with that situation where they're nervous about industry involvement?
Yeah, that's a great question. And it's a great opportunity to just live up to our mission statement of helping you all treat your patients better. We We, obviously we're a business. We're trying to do well in that regard. But ultimately, I think what drew me to Arthrex and what makes it so unique is that the patient is still the center focus. Reinhold has done an incredible job at Arthrex ever since he started in '81 to keep the company private. So there's no shareholders that he has to appeal to. There's no quarterly statements that have to be emphasized, or profits that have to be justified, or decisions that need to be justified. And there's a lot of decisions that he makes that don't make good financial sense. I wouldn't say a lot. He's been very successful, but there are certain instances where he will invest a tremendous amount of money into building a device or a tool to make the job of the surgeon easier, so that you're not having to worry about that. You can keep your mind focused on that patient's outcome. And we try to live up to that through our commitment to medical education. Locally, every agency in the country has, if not one, several local cadaver labs that allow their surgeons to practice and rehearse and bring their team in. And that's a no cost to them, accessory to their practice that they can use to continue to leverage their training into advancing their skills. So
this is important for, I'm sorry, Austin, let me interrupt you, but I want to hear this.
Please.
I want the young surgeons, I want Will to understand this, because Will always hears, I went to the lab and I practiced it, and then I tried it, and then I was able to take it to the patient and do a good job. And we had Acevedo on, he was talking about that as well.
Oh yeah.
In a lot of the companies, and again, I'm not poo-pooing any of the companies. I've worked with a lot of them. They're all of them have their different benefits of working with them. But if I want to try something, I can call Austin. He's like, hey, I'll get you a lab. We'll do it in the cadaver. We'll practice it. And I mean, Austin, we've come up with new techniques. I mean, I would tell the patients that how many times I've been in the lab? It's way too many, right? I know that. I grab my coffee. I know exactly where I'm supposed to go, right? But the thing is, that's how you get better, right? Like we don't want to practice on a patient, right? Like we have nuances we can change in the operating room. But if it's something big, I mean, I remember starting practice, Will, like I called my rep who's working with Austin at the time, and I was like, I want to try these 2 new surgeons I'm about to bring to Seattle. Like, can we go and start? Before I started practice, I'm now almost 6 years. It's crazy. And basically was practicing in the lab to get ready for my patients. And it makes me better, faster, and more efficient. And it's crazy too. And again, I don't know what the Arthrex will think about this, but like we've practiced that plus adding techniques, right? Like new things, not just the Arthrex thing, right? So Austin's all about what can you do to get better, right? Like if I'm going to do 5 different things during a surgery and 4 are going to be Arthrex and 1 is going to be non-Arthrex, that's okay with these guys because they care about what the patient outcome is. And I think that's what's really hard for some of the newer surgeons to see is it's that like you don't always have to be doing everything from one place. And what the focus for them is like that you do a good surgery, right? Because a good surgery, you're like, I'm going to do that exact same technique and use the exact same instrumentation the same next time. I don't know if you have any questions about that, Will, but it's just
yeah.
People don't understand. It's so hard to get a cadaver lab at many of these companies. I've tried. I've been like, I want to do this in the lab. And unfortunately, I'm spoiled because I have the access to Austin because we're friends and he's able to help me out. And the Arthrex guys, I can get a lab whenever I want. They're always available. It's such an incredible resource and it's so rare.
Yeah, I wanted to ask you, like, how do you elaborate on the patient's outcomes and satisfactions? How do you measure that, for making informed decisions for the product? So, based on a reaction from the patient, how do you give that feedback, that, whatever that decision making is?
From my perspective, we rely heavily on people like Dr. Garcia. He treats the patients and it's been very compelling. As you mentioned ACL repair earlier, there's a variety of techniques out there. I am biased, but I feel like we have the best technique and the best product for that, procedure. But we rely heavily on our surgeons to say, hey, this needs to be improved. This was a struggle. This was finicky. And Reinhold, that's how he started the company, and that's how he's maintained the flow of information at the company. Is surgeons are in the pilot seat. We're in the background trying to make sure that we can give the surgeons the tools that they can use to most optimally treat their patients. So when they say, it's rare, I would say, Dr. Garcia, you might agree with me. It's rare for Arthrex to produce something that is flawed. They do such a great job thinking it through because they have so many surgeons offering guidance and feedback. But in the instance that there is a refinement that could be offered or interjected, the surgeons bring it, and there's always, it's amazing. You go down to our headquarters in Naples, there's always people in the labs trying to refine the practice of surgical orthopedic surgery and spine surgery and laparoscopic surgery. It's incredible.
Well, and I don't want to after there. I think we should even change the word from flawed, right? When we had like, Will, we've talked about this. There are these special anchors, and they're so minuscule, and they're so amazing for shoulder labrum repairs, right? And then knotless fiber tacks, right? And they've been changed 4 times in the last 3 years, and it's not because they're bad. It's not because they were flawed. It's like, oh, some other person figured out how to make it even better.
Yeah.
So I think what Austin is also trying to say is that there is a lot of change. I mean, you could have a product and you get like that swivel lock you showed. There's been renditions. There's different changes of it. There's all these different things, and the reason being is not because the last product was flawed. They need to fix this, right? Occasionally there are products like that. What's really interesting too is that they have a lot of background input. There's alpha and beta, like I mentioned, and so before the product hits mainstream, they'll have surgeons, and Austin's really big on this. Have surgeons evaluate the products, and they listen to it. I mean, every time I do a beta testing, I'm sending notes, and the reps, Rachel, we can talk about her at some point. She's amazing. But she's writing notes about what's going on in the technique. Garcia didn't like this. He liked this part. This was good. And half the time you want to be, and obviously I have a lot of discussion where I say, oh, maybe I did this wrong. And a lot of times it is the surgeon, the technique, we did it by holding the hands or something, but they're really good about making sure that they teach us the right way to do it. And if there's something that we're concerned about, it's not, most surgeons unfortunately will, and you may or may not know this, they like to blame others, which is not good, for something if it's not going right. And we all know that we all have error in us. And it's never a bad thing. If you have a little, if you're putting the anchor in, it didn't go exactly the way you wanted, it's not a catastrophic issue. But what we understand now is that unfortunately every surgeon's learning curve is different. And what Arthrex really does is they want to eliminate the learning curve. And that's really, really hard to do. And I found that out by working with Arthrex over the last 5 years, that I'm like, well, I do this a lot, but like maybe the surgeon next door doesn't do a lot of those. And so I'm like, I don't understand why you can't figure that out. Or I do something, I'm like, I don't understand this thing. And they're like, you tell them an idea and they're like, that's way too complicated. And you're like, that we're just talking about like an anchor, right? It's a little swivel, you pull it out, you pop the button, this is straightforward. They're like, no, that might, like we're talking about a design right now. And I was told that they can't do 2 loops because sometimes they cut the wrong loop, right? Like you're like, that doesn't make any sense to me. But they're so keen on making sure that the surgeon's happy with the product, and the product works flawlessly every single time. And that's really, really hard to find in the industry. Like, it's just amazing that they're like, I want someone that does 1 of these and does 10,000 of these to be just as good every time they put it in. And that's extremely hard to do. That's way harder than you'd ever imagine.
If I can interject, I know I'm just a passenger on this journey together, but it seems like a perfect opportunity if I can make a shameless plug for our people, because I think a big part of that too is the technology's there. You're obviously a gifted surgeon, and surgeons are very well trained, but to have the support of a competent rep in the background that knows the technology, is prepared to do their job well, which you mentioned Rachel Robinson. She's our rep that covers your surgery center, and she's super stellar. She's a rock star, and she wants to make sure that she doesn't let the patient on the table down or you down. And internally, I think that's another differentiator Arthrex does really well, is we have our own medical education director, a gentleman by the name of Bram Shamus, who's a brilliant guy and devotes a lot of his time and energy to making sure that when we have a rep going to an OR, they know what they're doing. And, we all have room to improve. We're all continuing to grow on our journey, but, we invest heavily in those resources to make sure that we're not sending somebody into that procedure that can't assist, especially when something goes wrong. Right. And that's I think it's a remarkable,
that's an incredible point. I don't think, we do enough discussion of everybody else behind the scenes, right? Because it's impossible. Like, you've been productions, like you can't, every camera person, every lighting person, you can't talk about it. I'm not trying to dumb down the reps or anybody else into like a light or a camera or but what's incredible about the reps on Arthrex, in my opinion, is that that you even get some people that are new and they're really, really intent on learning, right? I mean, I will tell you, and Austin may think, we have some of the hardest surgeries we do in the state in our operating room. Very complex, high volume, really intense. Like I remember the best, and Will may think this is funny, but inside information, I was always told that my OR is the most giggles and the most stressful at the same time because we're doing such complex procedures, but we're also having a good time. And so that to me is the key. But the fact that a rep can come into that situation and they're prepared for it and they have notes. I mean, Rachel, I don't want to make it about Rachel because I know that she's going to blush when she hears this, but I asked her about something I did and she's like, oh, you did this like 6 months ago, you did this way. And I was like, how did you remember that? And right, Will, she's writing notes.
Yep.
So it's not like I may steer the ship, but I have lots of people that help me out. Like my outcome in the end for the patient is because of Rachel, because of my scrub techs, because of my PAs, because of my scheduler. Like this is a combination. This is a team effort to get there. And if you don't, they are the final finish line, right? Like when I'm doing something, if your rep's not good and all of a sudden I do something that doesn't work, how do I decide? And I've never seen it, right? Like Rachel and I have been together most of the time, but she works with other surgeons or other reps do too. And if they actually have more experience than the surgeon does combined, Will, because they're going every day to the operating room. And so they know their product and they go, this doesn't work, do this. And early on, that was huge for me. I mean, I had Kyle, he's awesome. And he was like, he told me something went wrong and he's like, this is how you fix it. I'm like, I had never even heard of that. And I've been in HSS where these guys are using Arthrex products left and right. And you learn something new. And the cool part is if you keep an environment where you're like, hey, just teach me because I want to learn too. And that's really, I think, the one thing you guys do a really good job of. You build a relationship so the surgeons are willing to be taught, right? Like there's other companies, and I will not name names, where I don't want to be taught by anybody because to me, I don't feel like there's the same caliber of what I'm getting, which is why to me, the relationship's so important. Because of the consistency and because of the personalities. I mean, Will, in our OR, they're like the reps there for Arthrex come in, they're like best friends. Everyone's like, hey, Rachel, thanks. Good morning. Let's get going. You ready for today? And she's like, oh yeah. And they put so much effort in. Will, it's hustle all day long, hustle. And that is a hard thing to do. And that's something that's built by the brand. And I think, Austin, one thing I think that people would say is, and Will might be able to attest to this, but one knock I think people talk about Arthrex is that the products are expensive, right? They maybe are more expensive than some of the other brands. But for the patients listening and for the surgeons is that unfortunately, when you usually pay for what you get, right? So if you don't have the higher quality stuff or the higher quality thing, you don't get the rep in the room that knows what's going on. You don't get the medical videos to teach you how to do it. And Will, I don't know what your thoughts are, but I think that if I offered you, and again, there's nothing wrong with a Honda or a Toyota or a BMW or a Mercedes, I think you know which one you might choose, right? It's just there's just a difference.
It's funny you're talking about this, and it reminded me, and I'm really going off the beaten path here. An episode of The King of Queens, right? And he wants to surprise his wife with LASIK surgery. So he's like, all right, for your birthday, we're going to get you the LASIK surgery. You're going to no more glasses. So, he goes and takes her to surgery and she wakes up the next day. It's blurry. The day after that, it's blurry. Finally, she's at her birthday party. She can't see anything. And then, one of the friends comes by and it's like, hey, I heard you had the surgery. It's like, yeah, blah, blah, blah. Did you go to my guy? And she was like, what are you talking about? Yeah, this guy. He's like, no, I went to this guy. And she found out that her husband got cheap and kind of got like a Groupon 50% off on one eye or the other. And he wound up having to go back to the original guy to get it fixed. So in a weird way, like I said, I'm going off the beaten path.
You're not off the beaten path.
You pay for what you get. And when in this case, he got cheap on it, didn't get the necessary tools. And the result was a very angry wife that did not celebrate a birthday. So it's one way to think about it.
Thankfully, I mean, again, there are a lot of other product companies that have made good products, but I think what we're trying to get at here is that you have this consistent quality, which to me is really important. And my patients are looking for it. My patients are like, did you put metal in me? That's the one thing they ask. Did you put metal in me? What type of anchors did you use? Like I get the Boeing engineers, I get the Microsoft, I get the Facebook, and they've done all the research, right? They've seen the Olympics and they saw the two players that got back after Arthrex. And they're asking me, am I going to do it? Will asks, am I going to do a speed bridge? Right? So if you don't offer that option, what are you going to do? Right? You got to stay up with the times. And so to me, it's the patients have gotten smart. And that's what helps build, honestly, for surgeons listening. One of my biggest pulling points is that I offer some of these products because the patients want it. I mean, it's just a no-brainer. Patients want their ACL repaired. And if you can do a good job on it, you have an awesome product that you can support. It makes it easier. And it's a heck of a lot easier for me to offer the surgery for the patients when I feel like consistently I'm not giving up something, right? Like if I knew something would save me money and it was inferior, I would absolutely never, ever use it in a patient. And I talk about this with my partners and everybody else. It's like, why are you using this thing versus this? I'm like, I think it's better. And if I didn't think it's better, and this is the best part about Austin and why our relationship worked out, if I don't think it's better, Austin's like, then don't use it. Like Austin's in sales, but I can tell you right now, if Austin sells me something that's expensive and crappy, sorry to put us on the call, he knows I'm done. I'm not going to ever trust him on that product. And so that's what's really good about them too. It's not overselling, right? We're in sales. Trust me, it's a business and that's the way it works. But at the same point, it's amazing the focus, with corporate Arthrex, but also this relationship we have with Arthrex and Pacific Northwest and Austin's team is that you can describe this better, but you guys really, that's not your goal. Like your primary goal is not, we have to find a way to get involved in everything possible. It's more like, what do you need? What's going on here? What's the problem here? What's your issue here?
Absolutely. I mean, that's another unique approach that I think Arthrex senior leadership has understood and done very well for a long time. They look at solutions for problems, right? We're a partner and we're a symbiotic partnership between the two of us. You treat the patients. How can we make your job easier? How can we make sure that if that's my mother on the table, she has the best, most optimized outcome possible? And I appreciate the fact that you recognize the value there, because I think that's a really important part of what we do. And it's not dissimilar to surgeons' reputations in the community, right? I mean, the value that you provide to a patient, the experience that you provide to the patient, is not the only distinguishing factor that sets you apart, but it's certainly something that attracts patients to you from the word of mouth reputation that you've developed, along with your exceptional skills. But for us, it's very similar. We can come in and try to hammer you over the head with what we want you to use, but I'm not an orthopedic surgeon. I understand it at a lower level, but I do know that we can offer solutions to problems and make the patient's outcomes better with the technology. So we want to introduce those things. We want to make sure people are aware and raise the awareness level. And Arthrex has done incredibly well at that as well, with things like in terms of the living up to the commitment to education with our Orthopedia website. Reinhold's invested immense amounts of money into that resource that is not even branded Arthrex. It's just a resource for people to learn around the world on surgical techniques and biomechanics. Dr. Chris Adams, our global director of medical education, who's a Burkhart fellow orthopedic trained surgeon, very successful guy, has committed a ton of hours with an impressive team to build out those resources where they go through the anatomy, then the biomechanics, then the clinical relevancy, and so on and so forth. You've seen that website, but it's an incredible commitment, and they back it up with their actions, which is a really fun thing to be a part of.
And I think before I talk about the thing behind me, I think we should tell people too, people want to know, they've seen posts of like, I fly to Naples, right? It's a far distance. And obviously there is some level of compensation when I fly, but at the same point, it's still time away from work, time away from my family. So what's the reason for doing it? Well, the reason for doing it, and the reason that, any surgeon who's interested should learn about it or see the headquarters or even go downtown to, Kirkland to see it, is the teaching and the what's gone into the resources to allow us to do this. I mean, if you want to show the headquarters, I mean, it's just absolutely gorgeous, Will. It's got, pickleball courts, its own hotel, its own restaurant. Like this is talking about this is better than going to Vegas for an orthopedic surgeon, trust me. And the labs. I mean, you might see eventually a video where I'm in an operating room. It's not even the operating room, it's just like an operating room they built up just for videos to show people like in an operating room. And they've got a studio, one of like 7 in the country, and that's called Studio X, and that's behind me. And what it is, they can turn into anything they want, any environment, and they can film commercials there locally. It's pretty sick. But what they really use it for is to teach other surgeons and to teach patients. And I think you guys have, we've talked about my videos on my website. I've got so many, 200, 300. And part of that is honestly just mimicking stuff that Arthrex has done because it works so well for me to learn, right? Like all of us want to learn, and the surgical videos are so important. but I mean, the amount of money that Reinhold's invested in it this is not like, there's no reason to have done that much money. He just did it because he wants to show everybody and he wants to have the best video products, right? There's no reason to have 25K videos for your products from a monetary standpoint, right? It doesn't make a difference, in my opinion, to show that and you don't make more money off that. He's just doing it because he wants people to have the best, and that he wants to show his stuff in the best possible format. Would you agree? And that's what you're probably talking about. He doesn't always. It's not always about the dollar, or it's not about the stockholder. It's about well, how can I show that? How can I have the best, and how can I give everybody the best experience?
Absolutely. Not to sound cliche, but it's been described as a nexus of innovation. And as interesting as that may sound, it really lives up to its reputation. Reinhold's designed it to be such so that, people have a place in the country where they can go, and inevitably you bump into another surgeon from, another part of the country, and they're talking about the same challenges. Or world, right? Yeah, we come across Europeans and South Americans and people from Asia Pacific region, and they're experiencing the same challenges, same anatomy, same injuries, and you can rub elbows together and say, "Hey, how can we make this better?" And then Reinhold says, to the degree of having rapid prototyping and digitally enabling technologies to improve the patient's experiences. And I can say without hesitation, he, in even the personal conversations, he's so devoted and committed to the experience of improving the patient's experience, the patient's outcome, and supporting the surgeon in a way that they have the resources and they see that as an extension of their practice to be successful. It's really a remarkable thing.
So, Will, how many times? Oh, sorry. One second, ask a question.
Yeah.
Will, how many times have you seen a company as big as Arthrex, and everybody knows the CEO by first and last name, and where you go to a random event? Let's say you have Walmart and you go to a Walmart function and the Walmart CEO is hanging out there. Let's say you have like a McDonald's and the McDonald's CEO is out there. Again, not belittling anything that Arthrex does, but I don't want to get to the proprietary of other companies, but it's one of the few companies where the CEO is constantly there and involved. And I think that's really what makes a difference, right? I'm out there, Will, I'm out there for something, and all of a sudden he shows up at breakfast and he's like, "Hey, Grant, hey, Garcia." And I'm like, "This is the CEO of Arthrex." And he knows everybody. He just has that. And he starts asking questions. "What do you think about this? What do you think about this?" I'm just like, holy cow, this is a lot of information. This is the guy who's the CEO of the company. So, it's just the involvement, and that makes you feel really good, right? Like, Will, if you were working for someplace, you never knew your boss, you never knew anybody else, and you just basically did your job and you kind of sat down and you kind of sat there. It's hard, right? But to see all those people involved and so committed it's pretty impressive. It shows the mentality.
Yeah, and that shows also that it's organizational culture, right? So
Right.
Obviously, I've never met this individual, but what has been discussed and how his policy is, that is what he's promoting, breeding, and encouraging, right? Is that culture. So he's setting the standard so then everyone else could follow along. And that's why you have folks like Austin and some other people that will be a part of your community, because that's the culture that he's fostering. So, on my culture there. Anyway, so we talked about technology, we talked about innovation, and it's 2024. And what is the hot topic that's happening right now? That is the super advancement in technology, right? The industrial revolution of this decade and century is going to be AI. So how is AI, machine learning, virtual reality, how are they starting to think about that, to apply that to not only the tech you have now, but future tech going down the road?
That's a great question, and it's an exciting frontier to be a part of. Arthrex is always looking at ways to enhance, the offerings that they provide to surgeons for the patients. And one of those areas that they can use machine learning is, we in our shoulder arthroplasty portfolio, we have a tool that is a tool that's accessible to all surgeons. It's we call it a VIP targeting system, but it's based off of the patient's native anatomy through CT examination, digitization. And so with machine learning, they can look at this array of CT images of different shoulders and identify, based on the patient's anatomy and the morphology of their scapula and the humerus and the acromion, that there's an optimal position of the products and the implants during the surgical intervention. And that is a game changer, because you don't have to wonder, is this screw going to go through and hit a nerve? Is this base plate going to be too far lateral? The machine learning, based on the formulas and the weights and inputs that they include in the algorithms, allow you to have a much more precise determination. And now they can start to, and I think we're still exploring this, but can start to upload or include other patient specific considerations, like other components of their health and their genetic background, things like that, to make more specific decision making that allows for the surgeon to not have to wonder as much. Not that I don't think the surgeons are necessarily wondering often, but it reduces and eliminates some of that gray area in terms of implant position and implant sizing selections. That's just one unique way I think Arthrex is doing it. They're looking at different ways that they can visualize, or the surgeon can visualize intraoperatively, the anatomy, say for a spine, and some of the revolutionary designs that Arthrex has partnered with some really exceptional surgeons in the spine world to better visualize and identify patients' anatomy when they're suffering from extreme pain.
Okay, just to follow up on that, can you see a world where Arthrex is not only leading in technology with what you're doing now for surgical outcomes, but also in a preventive way, with having this AI information about the anatomy and seeing where there may be certain situation because they've ruptured their Achilles twice and they know their tendons a certain way, where maybe and maybe I'm going too
No,
future,
Will,
but
keep going. Keep going. I'm going to
where
help on
can we
this one.
see this Arthrex preventative innovation headed down the road?
So I'm going to help a little bit, and then I'll let him jump in. Sorry, but this
Please.
is amazing, Will. Arthrex's focus is not on putting 100 implants into a patient and revision. Arthrex's goal, by adding such as and Will, don't get too excited yet, internal brace, adding biologics, adding all these things, is so that you don't have to come and do the surgery again. And whether it will be more cost effective, that's the key here, is no more second surgery. And that's why I use a lot of my Arthrex product, because I don't want to do another surgery on a patient. I want to give them the internal brace, the regular ACL. If I need to add biologics to it, I will. With the ACL repair, we're working on more biologics, tissue engineering, biomaterials, you name it. Wound healing, jumpstart, amniotic patches. We could go all day on this stuff, but that is the number one thing they want. They want to find ways to prevent the second surgery. Preventing original surgery, there's biologics. There's all these different things too that they have. Again, I digress. Awesome. Keep going. Sorry to interrupt.
No, that's great insight, Dr. Garcia. I appreciate it. But yes, Will, your question, can I envision a world where Arthrex is leading the way in that space? With the leadership that we have in the organization and the teams that we have abroad, I can envision leading in any space. But especially in the area of preventative medicine, we have among the companies that are in orthopedics and in the industry the broadest portfolio of biologics implements that our customers are exposed to consider the entire algorithm of care, if you will, in how they treat the patient prior to degeneration of tissue or cartilage, during the procedure, and then also post-operatively. So biologics, I know internally our leadership is so strongly supportive of that direction that they're implementing those things in their own bodies on a regular basis, to prevent arthritis, prevent tendinopathies, different things like that, in a way that it just shows the commitment to the development into the space. And I think that that's something that Arthrex is going to, I can't speak for Arthrex in terms of, organizational strategic initiatives, but from my perspective and from what I've heard, I would say that they're absolutely geared up to do whatever they can to make it so that the patient doesn't have to, have the problems that they're potentially going to have. And that's if the patient's at the forefront or in focus in a topic, and there's a way to get better, Arthrex is going to, at least from my perspective, continue to do what they can and invest in developing ways to mitigate the risk for the patient.
The key word that you said a lot of important things, but when you said arthritis, and there's so many people that suffer through that, and getting closer to relief along one of many different ways, that should be exciting for everyone, along with all the other things that you talked about with preventive medicine. So it's really exciting.
Will, and one more thing. I think what Austin brought up that's really important, it's very rare in a company, is the size of Arthrex is a little bit alarming to some surgeons and overall when you hear about it, but the size is what gives them their domination, because they have crosstalk between the groups. Like when I'm working on something with ACL repair, and I'm like, hey, I want to add biologics. I want my patients to even have a better healing rate. I'm not satisfied with 90%. I'm not satisfied with 96% healing rates. I want 100. I want 99. They're looking at, and again, we could pull up the tightrope, which I love talking about in there. But they're like, let's get the biologics team involved. Or Austin's like, let me look at the portfolio. And because they have so much in their portfolio, this thing in 3 or 4 years, as amazing as it's going to hear, and obviously the whole knee team's going to hear me say this, is probably going to be even obsolete for Arthrex soon, because it's so good, but we can make it even better, right? We can add biologics to it. Can we get the healing up, right? Like maybe this technique is going to stay there, but there's going to be something added to it. Like we're not even close. We're not even close to the end of this sort of reign of continuing to improve. Would you agree?
Absolutely. I think, as long as there's injuries, we're going to continue to pursue with vigor better ways to treat them, right? And optimizing the patient's outcome. As long as there's a patient on the table, we can continue to get better. And again, I can't speak to Arthrex corporate strategic initiatives as an agency representative in the little state of Washington, but from what I know and from what I see, I would absolutely expect that if there's an opportunity, they're thinking of a way to make it better. They're thinking of a way to make the patient get back to activity quicker, to get back to sport quicker, to get back to work quicker for the patients that, a lot of these surgeries require a lot of downtime. I think of, somebody that's a single parent can't afford to take 6 weeks laying down because they have back pain. So we could go way off topic on that issue. But as an example, I was getting a haircut a couple of weeks ago, and my barber is a female. She said, I'm really struggling with this pain in my leg, and said, have you seen a spine surgeon? She said, I have. They've done some injections. Now they want me to get surgery. They say I need a decompression. And I talked to her about, our Arthrex has recently made a foray into endoscopic spine surgery. And instead of doing a large 2-centimeter incision, you can do it through a scope, 8-millimeter incision. And she started to cry.
Dr. Schaefer, Will. That's who we have. Remember? We just had him on talking about Arthrex stuff.
Yep. Incredible surgeon, and similar to you, cut from a similar cloth in terms of an affinity for innovation and how to optimize the patient's outcome. But she broke down. She said, I'm a single mom, and they told me I would have to take 6 weeks off of work. I can't afford to take 6 weeks off. And I said, I recommended Dr. Schaefer, gave her your practice's number and the website. And I said, people are getting, endoscopic spine decompressions, and they're walking out of the ASC. They're back to work 2 days later. It's incredible what's going on. And that's cool from a technology standpoint, but man, it's really impactful from a patient outcomes perspective.
Well, and I think what you brought up is really important. Some patients don't understand the technology sometimes, and that's why we have this show, just tell people about the new technology. That's why I had, as soon as Andre got in practice with us, to talk about endoscopic spine, because I don't think, and it's sad because what you said is common. I mean, I literally just had multiple patients I saw today in the clinic, and the lady was like, I can't believe my ACL is going to be walking out of there, and I'm going to be moving this quickly, and I'm going to, my UCL, I can start throwing the baseball so soon. I thought that it would take longer, like my last one did not, or the other surgeon told me this, and I'm like, listen, the technology we have, I can let you rip, right? We can do it, right? You have an internal brace in that ACL. You can go harder on it. Like, it doesn't mean that we're going to be too aggressive. We just had an ACL repair patient, and she was worried because she had seen other protocols and they were slow. And she's like, I'm worried about tearing this. And I'm like, listen, this new ACL repair is way stronger. I feel much better letting you go. And you could just see her face. Just calm down. Oh my gosh, I'm not going to tear this right away. I know you're not. I trust it. That's why I do so many of these. And so I think Will can attest to this, but having that basic technology, and we can bring it up. We can talk about internal brace for a few minutes, Will, if you'd like, to bring it up. But it's just part of. I mean, yeah, talk about that honestly, Austin. You're the master of all things Arthrex. But how has the internal brace concept changed your entire perception of things?
It's incredible. I mean, when you look at the incidence of re-tear rates in a lot of these, Gordon Mackay back in the late or early 20 teens and mid 20 teens really put some interesting work, a surgeon out of Scotland, into the lateral ankle, and Pat Smith and yourself and so many have really kind of been willing to give this a shot for their patients. And I think the data has shown that there's a tremendous value added to the procedure for the patient if it's incorporated. It started out as a supplement for ATFL ligament repair, or what's called a Brostrom procedure. And you have these patients that are frequently rolling their ankles, because I think Dr. Mafuli published 10-year data that showed that the native tissue repair stretches out over time. So is there a way to strengthen this so the patients don't, as you mentioned earlier, don't need a second surgery, don't need a revision to this? And it worked so well, people started to think, innovative surgeons started to think, maybe this could be applied in other ligamentous areas of repair and reconstruction. And now we see, people using these, and we see second looks where a patient gets into a car accident and they hit their tibia on the dashboard and their femur slides way forward. And all of a sudden, the tightrope, or excuse me, the internal brace ruptures, but their ligament's intact. So we preserved them from needing an entire new reconstruction. And
I have personally had that, where a patient, I scoped him and I saw the internal brace had torn and the ligament was still intact. Or you go in there and you scope them for another reason, you see the internal brace has grown into the ACL. It's just incredible.
I mean, the 70s, people didn't wear car seatbelts, right? And then they were invented, and somebody quickly realized we should put these in every vehicle. And it's very similar to the advent of the internal brace, where why, maybe it's not relevant to every procedure, but why wouldn't you do it if you can give the patient a more optimal outcome with that backstop in the construct?
This is a good question. I get this a lot from patients, and Will may have this question too, since he has part internal brace in his body. I would get this question: is it going to damage my ligaments?
Mm-hmm.
But I mean, in your perspective, I tell them I've put in thousands of these, and it actually grows into ligaments. Is that what you guys have seen? Like, what is your experience with this? I mean, to me, it's very inert. It's collagen impregnated, right?
That's right. It synovializes with the ligamentous repair and healing process. And we've put millions of strands of fiber tape into human bodies since the early 2000s, and the reaction rate is insignificant. And so it's an incredibly safe, inert product that is there as a support for the construct that gives the patient the opportunity to prevent re-tear of their ligament. It's a great adjunct to what's being done biologically there, because you can speak to the science far better than I can, but as those grafts reincorporate, we know that they kind of turn into a jelly before they really reconstitute as a ligamentous tissue. So in that season of reconstitution, having something there that can offer a little bit of mechanical support makes a lot of sense. And I think the data shows that.
Got a quick question here. As we get ready for the NFL season that's coming up, and just looking across the board, where around the world, football is the number one sport. Here it's NFL. Can you see a place where owners, and this is probably just personal thought, not trying to label the company's thought process behind this, but where these owners and these big industries could possibly start to incorporate some of these things in their players. For example, we see every offensive and defensive lineman pretty much wear knee braces, right?
Mm-hmm.
We know that between knees and ankle damages in the sport of football, it takes time away from the pitch, and these $1 billion worth of revenue that come through, especially if it's deemed safe is it something that you can see, or is this kind of a little far-fetched as far as what, we may see in the future of sport protecting their investment? And maybe not exactly the internal brace, but maybe there's some future tech along the
No,
line.
I think this is a great point. I think what you're asking for is that's what they do. The Arthrex teaches the team doctors. I mean, you have a team physician meeting for all the team surgeons in the country that come to it,
Mhm.
and they learn about techniques that the other team physicians are doing, and so it becomes a standard of care in the NFL, right? I mean, that's pretty much
That's
what
right.
that meeting is for.
Mhm.
It's an incredible meeting, and you can talk more about it briefly. But Will, that's already happening. You just don't know about it.
Yeah, I think we see more and more stories of high profile athletes that, to your point of protecting the investment from the team's perspective, it makes sense, right? I mean, anecdotally, I've heard team doctors say that there's even been big linemen that have had a history of rolling their ankles ask
Mhm.
for the internal brace prophylactically, just as a preventative measure. No, I don't think any surgeon in good conscience would do that. But the concept is there, be for the same reason you're asking the question. It makes a ton of sense to reinforce some of those injury-prone anatomic locations for
And maybe
sure.
this is the question that we're talking about leading into, future tech, right? Because maybe it's not set up exactly the way it is now, but maybe as we go ahead and look 5, 10 years from now and seeing a product that is safe, that can help players, maybe this is something along the lines, whether it's Arthrex or anyone else, that, they're protecting this huge investment, because we're seeing common injuries in certain sport to protect, and it'll be interesting to see what happens. So, as we always like to
Will,
talk about
I
future
think
tech,
you're
right?
onto a new show idea, by the way. This is phenomenal. So no, this has been talked about in ACL repair. There is some theory that so in ACL repair, sometimes you do an extra ligament called a extra-articular tenodesis called an IT band, or you can do an ALL reconstruction. There's some thoughts about doing that second ligament, but just doing internal brace if someone hasn't torn their ACL but is a high prone. And actually, I don't even know if there's a published study. I thought there was on this. It seemed like, I don't know how the IRB would approve it, but some players have been considering doing that to prevent getting their ACL torn. So you're onto this, and I don't know how it will ever ethically get approved or how anybody would ever undergo it, but there are some athletes that want the edge, and an ACL tear is devastating, or an ankle sprain. We've seen hundreds of those in the NFL. Saquon, obviously no longer a Giant, so we don't want to talk about him too much. But rolled his ankle. Will and I are both Giants fans, by the way, also. So I do think that it'll be prophylactic, or though what we've seen now is surgery happens sooner, right? We have better instruments. So the old way of like, let's wait 20 times before you get surgery. Now it's like, you're getting surgery right now. Like, it's way better this new way, right? And there was other player that got an internal brace for his MPFL, his dislocating kneecap, and it was way earlier than he should have. And he ended up doing great because it's much faster recovery than standard reconstruction, right? Those are the type of things we're talking about, Will. So prophylactic before the injury happens, or prophylactic before the standard would happen for a surgery. And therefore you reduce the issues later on. So everything you're talking about is spot on, Will. You should work for Arthrex.
Yeah, that's right.
All right, Garcia, we need to wrap it up here. But before we go, Austin, if you could control all of it, what would you like to see 5 years from now, 10 years from now, as far as a revolutionary tool or something biometric to help the patient and surgeon collaborate to take this to a whole other level? You've got the power. You're the god of Arthrex and all its little toys. What would Austin do with this power?
I'd love to come up with something unique, but I'm sure Reinhold's already thought of it. Yeah, I think that we would love to see things from my perspective. With the patient being the center of our focus, anything that we could do to anticipate the injury. Like if there's a device that could be used to test the quality of ligaments and tendons and look at their native tensile strength before the sports injury occurs, or if we could test the annular tissue of the vertebral disc and determine whether or not their disc was going to rupture, and go in and somehow would minimally or ultra minimally invasively prevent that from happening, I think would be remarkable technology. And I don't see why it's not going to be something that we see in the near future, with all the development going on in the tech space and the merging of tech into medicine. And you see different ads for AI being able to detect a breast tumor years before it actually develops. Those kinds of things, that is going to be a game changer for families around the world. And I think it would be a lot of fun to see Arthrex be a part of that, because selfishly, I'd love to be a part of it as well.
I love that.
And I think that's going to be the future, right? AI learning on MRIs. They're like, your disc is about to herniate. Go see the surgeon. 20-minute endoscopic procedure, little tiny patch, little internal brace on the disc will make him happy. And the surgery takes 15 minutes. There's no recovery time because you never got hurt in the first place, right? You almost got hurt, but didn't get fully hurt. And now you never going to tear that disc again, right? That's what it's at, Will.
Austin, thank you so much for taking time. This was extremely informative, and we really appreciate you being a part of the show. So thank you. I know Garcia talks to you all the time, but it was my pleasure to have you on. So thank you. Garcia,
thank you for the opportunity.
Austin.
I really appreciate
Austin.
you having me. It's a real privilege.
I'll talk to you tomorrow, Austin.
I'll look forward to it.
Dr. Garcia, man, Austin Robinson, that was awesome. You talk too much. Look, we're almost at an hour. It's all your fault. We're just gonna blame you for everything.
I don't know. I know you. It's because you give me too many layups, man.
It's great.
Unfortunately, I like all the guests too much. That's the problem. We need to put some guests that I want nothing to do with. Then we won't chat.
Yeah, that won't be any fun. Then we'll just be staring at each other and just comparing backgrounds. But listen, a lot of great information, right? We talked about training, VIP targeting system, machine learning, preventive medicine, biomaterials, tissue engineering, largest portfolio. Austin has I loved his answer on future tech. I mean, that is exactly, it's not a pie in the sky kind of answer. This is a legit answer where we all go, yeah, that sounds great. Sign me up. I'll take one of those. And, let me know when something's bad is going to happen in my body, right? Because that's where we want to get to, right? And whether it's, I know I'm going, here I go. I'm doing a 180 here, right? You go get a colonoscopy because you're trying to be preventative, right? You go through, you do certain things to make sure that you're going to be okay and you're catching it early. That's exactly what we're talking about, is having some tech, besides the wonderful things that they do now, is eventually hopefully getting to that point as well.
Well, we can do better, Will. We can always do better, right? That's the one thing of the show. I tell everyone this, if I'm doing the same thing I did 5 years ago, then I shouldn't be doing it, because you're not innovating. So preventative medicine is huge, and preventive orthopedics is actually not talked about that often, because I hate to say it, we like surgery. But if I can find a way to prevent people from having injuries and being fearful of injuring themselves and get to all the sports they love, I think that's honestly the best thing. And that is, I really appreciate Austin coming on and all the viewers listening. And I know we need to wrap it up because we're on 1 minute and 40 seconds before we get kicked off. So.
We're not going to kick off, but we got to stay under the 60-minute. And I love the thing that you guys talked about in the beginning, saying, yes, this works, but we can make it work better. And it's been changed 2, 3, 4 times, not because it didn't work or it failed. It's because you found a way, like, this works great, but if we do this, we can make it work better. So that's something that I took out of it, that conversation as well. And that's something that everyone should be excited about. It's not only that this is, we're doing something that's great and we're utilizing the tool that's great, but how can we make it better? And I think that was the common theme throughout all this. How can we make it better? Dr. Garcia, we're going to wrap it up. We've got NFL. Everybody's excited. I don't know how I'm feeling about the Giants. We'll talk about that the next show. But we're going to talk about key players coming back from injury, major injuries, how that affects the upcoming NFL season. And then somewhere along the lines, we'll probably take about 2 minutes and cry in our bowl about the upcoming Giants season. But as always, Dr. Garcia, our sports medicine orthopedic specialist, thank you for being with us. You rock as always. We'll talk soon.
Thank you, Will. Always good. Great episode. Thanks, guys.